bulletins to also always bring us up to speed with developments around this story. Do enjoy the rest of your day. All right, well, let's get more into this. And I'm being joined via Zoom by director and co-founder of BudgIT, Mr. Segun Onigbinde. Mr. Onigbinde joins me from the University of America. Thank you so much, Mr. Segun, and it's good to have you join us on the program.
Yeah, it's a pleasure being here, Tolu. I hope you can hear me clearly.
I can hear you clearly. I know you're sure and you've heard of what's been playing out in Nigeria to a point where our wallets got dry. We have no cash to put in our wallets because when you go to the banks, you can't get the cash. The ATM machines, no cash. The POS guys will charge you more than 50% sometimes of what you want to get. So how do you put this together? Now, what is your reaction first to this policy and this implementation that everyone sees that has been very faulty?
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's a great privilege to be here. I left the country a few days ago, so I'm also I've felt the brunt of this whole policy. First, I think the idea to change the currency is within the powers of the CBN. They have the statutory powers to do so. But I feel that the implementation has not been properly carried out. And because we're now in political terrain and political environment, there's a lot of politicization of this initiative. First of all, the CBN believes that too much money is out of circulation of the banking system, and they want to bring more cash into the system so that they can control inflation and also be able to apply significant monetary tools. But at the end of the day, it looks like you're trying to solve a problem, you're creating another. The Nigerians are drowning under this hardship, and they are not able to have access. So I think the implementation is faulty. The CBN should have looked at its capacity to print new notes, because we have changed notes. There was a time we moved from the paper 20 naira to the polymer 20 naira, and what we just found out that there was just an easing out process where the polymer just dominated the paper notes, and that was how we did not see the paper notes again. So the CBN should have been more systematic about this. I feel this was a hard decision. This was a sudden decision, and the planning was not well thought enough. But we're also aware that there have been connotations of politicians. This is an attack against politicians to do massive vote buying, but we want to see how that goes in the end.
Look at what's been playing out now. See long queues there on the screen. We have live pictures there, what Nigerians are going through. We're still kind of a cash-based economy. And for us to transit into full cashless system, that means we need to have that infrastructure that would help us leverage that. But it looks like that is not on ground. So why are we jumping guns? That's the way it looks to me.
Yeah, well, there's an interest to build a cashless economy, but that's a very difficult thing to do. Even developed societies like in Europe, in the US, this is a certain amount of cash that passes through the system. I mean, if you're likely going to give your child funds to school, either way, in any corner in the world, you still have to give that money in cash. So in some sort of way, we'll still have to run a cash-based economy. And I think the CBN did not effectively analyze its planning and to ensure that this is a seamless, especially when we have rural economies that depend heavily on cash. We know the POS had also been able to provide some ad hoc banking service in those environments, but we also know those POS machines depend on cash. So I think the implementation is what was not well thought out. If we want to tackle, if this is as been widely said, this is an approach to tackle vote buying mechanisms. There are institutions of the law that can tackle vote buying mechanisms. Nigerians don't need to go to this level of hardship just because you have political intentions or you even have monetary intentions. There is a systematic way where we have always replaced currencies, and I think we should have followed that process. If there's an issue there's a political connotation, it is we have institutions, we have the law, we should put all of that into effect properly.
Well, I also have Mr. Paul Alaje, who is also on via Zoom. is a partner and senior economist with SPM Professionals. Mr. Laje, I know you're aware of the Supreme Court order, but first, what is your experience with regards to this development?
Well, thank you so very much for having me. If I should talk about the experience regarding the cash crunch, which many Nigerians suffered, I can tell you that it's not an interesting thing at all, as many Nigerians are finding it very difficult to even buy food, because most food vendor, and I don't know if your correspondent have been to some markets in Abuja. As I speak with you, I'm in the city of Ibadan, where some market sellers, pepper sellers and so on have said, if you are not giving me cash, I am not going to sell to you. Why? Because if the total money realized in a day is 5,000, to convert that to cash, to go to the bush, to buy tomato to resell, it may cost them 1,000 naira. That is effectively 20% of the total sales, which could amount to their markup, the profits they expect on the business. So when you look at the policy and the impact on the downtrodden, unfortunately, they are more than the well-to-do. The population of those that are living under multidimensional poverty, not my figures, but different international and local organizations, including UNDP, had said over 130 million Nigerians are living under multidimensional poverty. And I can tell you, as someone who also operates in grain sector or in agro sector, especially the grain subsector for rice production, I can tell you that in the bush, nobody is willing to wait for your network to come before they collect money. Most of this money, most of these exchanges are done in cash. So this has slowed down supply chain, and that is why several organizations are saying, yes, the policy of central bank is not totally bad. The timing may be a concern, which of course I've said since last year when the news broke regarding the decision of central bank. I had said that this must be done with a lot of caution. And as the deadline approaches, we are all looking at 31st as at then, and now we're looking at February. Another ruling came from the Supreme Court, the highest court of the land, that, hey, before you need to suspend that. You cannot end it on people. Maybe this will give the central bank, and of course the 27 commercial bank, time to rethink and rejig. Because I tell you, as one of the persons who also make use of financial services, it's been very challenging to use some bank networks. Some, even in the last 5 to 6 days, we have seen some of them scaling fees of their banks, not because they don't want to work, but because of mob action that might come against them. So I can tell you very clearly that the real challenge we have here is money supply. Central Bank governor granted press interview last week, and I said that he's going to make sure that within 7 days this is sorted. President Buhari has also said that within 7 days this will be sorted. We are looking at just 2 more days. By close of business today, we'll be looking at 2 more days. But what exactly has happened? Over 2.1 trillion naira has been collected in cash, of the old notes. But what has gone back to the system is less than half of that. So there seems to be the supply side shocks where many Nigerians continue to make demand for their notes, for their monies on daily basis. Nigerian economy is on the go. It's not an economy that is robust at all. It's on the go. When you divide our population by our GDP, you understand what I'm saying. Meanwhile, there are other smaller economies that don't even have our population, but they are the size of our economy, so they can ignore some amount. But I can tell you, for some people, they're 5,000 naira, 10,000 naira. You've seen a man went nude in a banking hall. He forgot about his self-dignity. He forgot about shame. Because of how much, I doubt if the money will be in hundreds of millions, like some may have in their accounts. But for such person, if you say I don't have access to my cash and feel my money, it's a lot of challenge. At that time, maybe the network of bank is not available, and so on and so forth. So the general supply challenges is what has set the policy of central bank back and has made it unattainable at this time. And I hope that with the judgment of Supreme Court and some other that have clamored that central bank may need to rework. Maybe they will go back to the thinking, to their strategy room and come up with another solution. Because I doubt this judgment, and I must say this judgment say they should allow for old Naira note. And you see, when you hear that, you will think that tomorrow money will circulate the street of Nigeria. Can I respond to that? The answer will be no. You know why? Why? The reason is because central bank said they has already withdrawn 80% of the old notes from circulation. The government did not say central bank should release those 80% back to the economy. So it's only 20%, which is already here, and the new notes that will circulate the economy. So how has that really affected money supply? It's only stopping the 20% from going. And anytime it goes to the banking sector, the directive of banks is to go take it back to central bank. So I'm still wondering how this judgment will make a lot of difference, except for those that have this money, part of this 20% in their homes, and they want to use it for any purpose. I don't want to sound political. So for any purpose, I thought they may want to use it for. But for this 20% to be sufficient, and what we currently have in the system, I doubt very much if this judgment will make any difference, except and unless central bank release more into the system. That is when we can have pre-policy formulation stage. Other than that, the crisis may continue. But to stop this crisis, there is another option. The option is for bank channels. When I say bank channels, I mean bank electronic channels.
Now, Mr. Paul, allow me to interject you, Mr.
Many
Paul.
other things are likely affected.
Mr. Paul, we'll talk around the bank digital platforms and all of the challenges that Nigerians have faced later. But let me talk to Mr. Segun Onigbinde, who's also standing. But Mr. Segun, more than 60%, or some say, don't have bank accounts, and those living in the rural areas. And some are saying that this development might even make more of this. It will shift away from the traditional banks. And this might affect the banking sector in another way. What is your reaction to this? And also the money supply thing mentioned by Mr. Alaje.
Yeah, I think Mr. Alaje was very, very on point on the money supply issue. Money supply is not a tap you can turn on and turn off. If you're withdrawing funds from circulation, even if you inject that money back into the circulation, you're going to look at a week or two before the funds can go round and actually more Nigerians can get these resources from the bank. And I don't know the CBN approach of mopping up the money, so it's not like it's going to be that easy to put the money back into the banking system. The CBN has not properly designed a effective policy, so we might be stuck with waiting for the new notes. I think that's the scenario that we are going to be rationalizing the new notes, maybe pending to when we have the elections, or maybe if, around the politicization of it, maybe the elections might be shifted for a few weeks. Maybe that might be the situation. But the reality is that I don't think I see the CBN bringing back the old notes and say go, because psychologically Nigeria seems even to have moved on. A lot of people, you offer them the old notes, they are not too certain. Don't forget that the CBN governor even went to the floor of the National Assembly and said that they would receive the old notes even at the end of the expiration of it being a legal tender. They said so. But so Nigerians are still all excited by that. They want the new notes and they feel that that's what keeps them safe. The reality in all of this is that the CBN needs to get its acts together in terms of how it puts planning forward. Because you can't be saying you want to build a cashless society powered by digital banking, more Nigeria within the banking population, and you also begin to put mistrust and distrust technically into the banking system. Because a whole lot of people just believe that we need to run our operations out of the banking system if I can't get 20,000 naira or 10,000 naira out of the system. And it's also because the entire framework is faulty. If you go to parties on weekends, you would find some of these funds in bundles, in packs, in wraps. I wouldn't even be surprised on the election day if politicians are sharing some of these funds in numbers, across different parties. So it's still an elite capture situation that we might have found ourselves here. But we just need that. Overall, is that we have a supply problem. The CBN needs to be much more open and honest about its current supply constraints and find a way to ease the system. But I don't think it is safe or it is okay for us to go into an election season with this high level of tension.
Indeed. A big one there. Let me take that to Mr. Paul Alaje. High tension, like Mr. Onigbinde mentioned, as we move towards an election. You talked around the digital platforms, and I'm asking you, do you think our banks have the capacity to manage the volume of transaction that has been on in recent times following the implementation of this policy that obviously we see has some issues?
The answer is very obvious. Banks are not able to manage the capacity that we have suddenly exposed them to. It's obvious that some banks will tell you, account officer of bank would advise customer, if you want to do transfer or you want to do transaction on your mobile app, wait till 12 a.m. Suddenly, Nigerians have become vigilante of some sort without salaries, even to spend their own money. And bear in mind that when we don't allow people to engage in economic activity as at when due, it has implication on velocity of money. Beyond velocity of money, it also has implication on the gross domestic product. So this is us saying we want to tame inflation. If we want to speak purely professionally, we want to tame inflation. So if you are taming inflation, which is a good thing to do, I keep saying that this policy is not a bad policy. What is challenging with the policy is the ability to make it happen, which seems to be handicapped. We don't have sufficient capacity, electronic capacity to manage it. The 27 banks, in fact, beyond the issue of electronic platform and electronic capacity of banks, if you check the Moody's report, currently 9 of our best banks have been downgraded. But when we look at it, I doubt if people don't check reports or people don't see exactly the reality that these banks are constrained to do. I don't know if you bank with some of these banks that's on that report, but there are 3 of those banks that their network, particularly either you are using internet banking or mobile app, or you are using their USSD code. In fact, reported that some of them are even shut some of their branches because they find it very challenging to manage as the customer they have. And I spoke with some people in the bank, and they told me how when we had a number of people that were using our digital platform, sometimes we experienced seizure. Now that the number, we have suddenly told many people to resolve to digital platform, we need to upgrade. So that's why we're having some of the seizure we are having. How long it will take for this seizure to last will determine. But all of these are not without implication. The implication will reflect on election results, because what people keep in mind is pain, not gain. Anytime you go through pain, it seems to last more, and there is a psychology to explain that implication. In 2012, President Buhari, President Jonathan, through PPPRA, had mentioned that subsidy will go. And you remember how Nigeria repaid, gave him a big thank you in 2015. This is even closer than the gap between 2012 to 2015. So I wonder if government is not conscious that this moment is a unique moment, whether or not they understand the enormosity and the implication of what this means. We are getting closer to what happened in Sri Lanka. And I can tell you, fuel crisis in Sri Lanka, cash crisis in Sri Lanka, and more importantly, debt crisis. Nigeria, through ways and means alone, Nigeria, through ways and means alone, is going to now be servicing debt with over 5 trillion. If you check the queue in Lagos, as I talk to you and those people that are listening all over the country, from the city of Ibadan to all over the country, more cities, what you see is people experiencing queue because, even though NNPC has promised that we should give them again 7 days. That's my President Buhari, 7 days. So like CBN governor, 7 days. NNPC has also said 7 days. So let's wait for NNPC 7 days and see if the queue will disappear. But elections are close by. And of course, several actors are saying that we need to make Nigeria working. But with this policy I doubt if it will in this very short term. I hope that the needful will be done by authority so that we can move forward as soon as possible.
Mr. Onigbinde, let's talk about the impact now on rural dwellers, because that's been the issue for those that they don't have banks around their locality. And the CBN will tell you that we have agent bankers that would be able to attend to all of this, but this money's refused to go around. Now, what's the impact on the economic space? I'm looking at a country that is trying to grow, inclusive growth, and is going through something like this. There was a guy yesterday saying that I sell Indomie and all of that, and I need to get 200, 300, 400 naira from my customers, but they have to transfer to me, and I can't even get the money out when I want to buy more of my tools for me to make more Indomie. So now, what do you think? What's the impact of this? And how long will this tell on coming figures that we should be expecting? Say inflation, say growth rate and all of that. Do you think all of these developments, energy price hike, PMS scarcity, all of we can go on and on. What's the impact on the overall outlook for you?
I mean, the overall outlook does not look exciting for me. I think we, for the last 7 years or 7.5 years, we've paid lip service to macroeconomic fundamentals for our country, Nigeria. We've not paid effective attention to issues like inflation. I mean, inflation is over 20%. We've not paid attention to currency valuation. I mean, depreciation from around 200 to around 800 or 750. If you look at the parallel markets, or debt, or even on significant issues around there. So for me, I think that, especially at the trade component of the GDP, we might be facing a bit of challenge within this quarter by the time the numbers come up. That's something that one would want to see much more effectively where that pans out. Second is on the energy prices. Paul Alaji also mentioned about that. We cannot, we have to bite the bullet at some point. We don't have a choice. The amount of money that is being spent on subsidy, the kind of racketeering and corruption and abuse, or even it's something that is unsustainable. In fact, we have borrowed to pay subsidy. We have taken loans to pay subsidy. We have used excess crude account savings to pay subsidy. All the revenues that we've made from oil, we've used that to pay subsidy. Crude oil received that CBN NNPC is supposed to remit to us in USD. They have used that to defray subsidy. So the fundamentals are no longer adding up at this point, especially when you look at even the revenue profile of the government. And that's when government even resorts to CBN and this excessive use of ways and means that are rising up to 24 trillion naira. So for me, we have to find a way to buy the bullet. Now, but how do we buy the bullet is the question. How do we buy the bullet in an atmosphere of trust? You can't tell me that if first prices go as high as 300 or 600, even if you remove the entire subsidy, you can tell me that I will be excited hearing the brunt, and I'll see government officials with 20 cars, loud sirens, and hosting, big parties and living large. There has to be some element of trust in the system for me to accept that we are going through this crunch, we are going through this fiscal crisis altogether. So that if we take out first subsidy, and the price, and it has an outsized impact on inflation in the country, we might be tending towards social disorder if it's not properly communicated or not done in an atmosphere of trust. And I think that's why every single government says I want to remove subsidy, but when push comes to shove, it looks like they begin to waver, or they begin to say, I don't think I can do this. But these are the hard questions, existential questions Nigeria has to ask. What is the current state of subsidy, and how do we remove it in an atmosphere of trust? But finally, on the issue of the banking system, the CBN just needs to look back and say, and be honest with itself. I mean, when we say the CBN, we must trust its independence. And that's one of the key things, one of the biggest setbacks of this current administration. The independence of the CBN has been significantly eroded. So that you don't look at our institution from an independent monetary system, you look at it from a quasi-political organization. It's something that ridiculous as a notion of the CBN governor running, being alleged, or even not being alleged, evidently running for the APC primary. So when things like that come to fore, you are it's very, very obvious that the independence of that institution has been significantly damaged. And that institution has to bring back its confidence. And that's why on this issue of changing of notes, they need to strip out the political element of things. CBN cannot be perceived or judged for political interest, or either for some people or either against some people. They need to ask themselves the hard code fact: do we have enough cash to circulate in the system? Have we approached this currency change with a high level of decency and high level of professionalism? These are the questions that should be on the table. They can recalibrate around that from that position and take a much more proper and structured decision.
Let me before I allow you go, Mr. Segun, just like you mentioned too in the start, that some say this seems to be politically motivated, but we'll be looking at all of that. Those are what we've heard. But I'd like to ask you that some guys smiling to the bank at this time are the POS guys. that are supposed to help the people, but they also take advantage because they have to also get their monies one way or the other. I see Mr. Alaje smiling already. I'm going to ask you that same question. But Mr. Sean, before I let you go, what is your reaction to, I have 5,000 Naira and I can get just 4,000 Naira. 1,000 Naira is off it. So now every day we wake up, we have the Naira to Naira rate and we have the Naira to dollar rate. That is what seems to be happening now.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but I look at two things from a moral standpoint. Moral standpoint is that in the country of value of proper value system, nobody should be able to take advantage of that situation. Rules should be rules, standards should be standards. There was a rate for POS withdrawal. There's an amount. It's not too significant to ought the person involved in the transaction, and that stood. And that was helpful for inclusive banking system. Now, you take advantage of scarcity, and which is what you always see all the time in Nigeria. There's a flawed value system, but I wouldn't even want to tackle the value system more. I'll look at CBN and say, where's your supply? If I have enough fuel, if there are 10 police stations are selling fuel right now, then the price will have to come down. The competition setting. If every POS has enough cash, around the entire area, they're definitely the margin begins to fall. But if there's a supply problem that has not gotten round, and the question we have to ask yourself, CBN says it's no longer printing this currency out of the country, that is now using the security minting and printing company to print the new currency. Does that agency, does it have the capacity to replace around 2 trillion Naira in the circulation within a short period of time? Those are the questions you need to ask yourself. That's why I said that it goes back to the professionalism of the central bank, to look at things from an objective, independent perspective. And there are brains in CBN, there are intellectual people in CBN. You just want to understand that by virtue of the standard, you must act professionally and in a situation that can inspire confidence in the system.
Just hang on, Mr. Shombo. Let's wrap up with Mr. Paul. I like your reaction to that because I already saw you nodding. As one of my colleagues told me today that he got 40,000 with 8,000 Naira. Is here with me in the studio. He just told me that. I want you to react to that, please.
Well, when there is scarcity, you must have parallel markets. Is one of the attributes of laissez-faire economy. Anywhere there is scarcity, you see people will come up, people will naturally take advantage of it because the natural person is selfish. The natural person is selfish. So economics has provided solution to that. What is the solution economics provided? Improve supply side. If the central bank today returns the exact amount you have collected from old notes back to the system, POS prices will go back to the same, what it used to be. So the real challenge here is if you cannot make the digital platform work effectively, and I can tell you, digital platform cannot 100% replace cash. It is not possible. There is near cash, but there is cash. There is also currency of fiat. They play different roles in the economy. So for transparency and accountability, it is important to consider electronic platform. But for survival, because of the kind of economy you practice, cash must be available, what is just enough. So the way I would have taken this, if I were the governor of central bank, with the reaction of people, it will only tell me that I've not gotten to that point where cash is enough. That is how to respond to it. How to respond to it is not just by pleading with people here. It's good to plead. It shows how humble one could be. But more importantly, I will work with the commercial bank and other financial institutions that have access to cash to ensure that what is needful is made available to the people. And that is the way to go. You want to end fuel prices, improve supply side. Whatever it is that you need to end because of scarcity, improve the level of scarcity, then you see that it's not there. Water is very important for us. But what you pay for water, and if you have the same volume in gold, you will want to pay more for gold. You know why? Because gold is relatively scarce when it compares to a bottled water. So when you go to the river, you see plenty water. It's not purified. But the one in the glass that is purified that you want to drink is more valuable. Why? Because it's relatively scarce. So scarcity is what makes the difference. Our job is to reduce scarcity. And from the analysis I mentioned earlier, the central bank governor said over 2.1 trillion naira has been collected. and they are managing, they are still looking for means to integrate over 800 billion, which means it's not yet in the system. As at the last press briefing, what we should be looking at is how do we integrate more? Again, I also want us to become more scientific and use data. What seems to be missing here is data. If you look at what we were doing in electronic transaction before this policy came, and what we are doing in electronic transaction, are we saying that there is difference, or we have not allowed people to be part of economic activities, several economic agents? If that happens, Nigeria should be careful so that by the end of the quarter, by the end of the year, you don't look at having reduced growth. Already, international organizations are projecting low growth for Nigeria from the current 3% to between 1.5 to 2.5%. And our population growth rate is not taking it easy on us, which means, according to S&P report, even if you see growth in the short term, the income per head, which we call per capita income, may not be any different from what we are seeing. What that means in layman language is that more poor people may still be with us. You may see have more poverty. You may see have stagflation within the economy.
Well, it's not really a good way to live it, but we must just leave it at this point. I've been speaking to Mr. Paul Alaji, who's a senior economist and partner, SPM Professionals. Also being joined, we're joined live from the United States of America by the director and co-founder of BudgIT, Mr. Segun Onigbinde. My colleague, Femi Akonde, our State House correspondent, also joined us earlier to talk around this. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time on the show. This is